Before cancel culture existed, Hollywood buried its deepest secrets beneath layers of studio spin and hush money. Today, a single controversial tweet can destroy a career overnight, with hashtag campaigns mobilizing millions of angry users within hours. But imagine if modern audiences discovered the explosive scandals that rocked Tinseltown from the 1920s through the 1980s, armed with smartphones, social media, and an insatiable appetite for celebrity destruction. We're talking about behavior so shocking that it would trigger mass boycotts, Senate hearings, criminal investigations, and congressional testimony within hours of hitting social media platforms. These 17 scandals reveal a Hollywood where stars literally got away with activities that would obliterate any celebrity today, ending careers faster than you can say trending topic. The party that destroyed America's most beloved comedian started with bootleg liquor and ended in a courtroom. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was earning an unprecedented $1 million annually with Paramount Pictures in 1921, making him one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood. Despite suffering second-degree burns from an on-set accident, Arbuckle drove to San Francisco for a massive Labor Day bash at the luxurious St. Francis Hotel. On September 5, 1921, aspiring actress Virginia Rappe attended the party and became violently ill after consuming bootleg alcohol. 4 days later, she died from a ruptured bladder and secondary peritonitis. Party guest Maud Delmont, who had a criminal history of extortion schemes, immediately accused Arbuckle of assault. The story was seized upon by William Randolph Hearst's newspaper chain, which exploited the lurid situation with wildly exaggerated stories. Hearst allegedly boasted that the scandal had sold more newspapers than when the Lusitania went down. Arbuckle endured 3 separate trials, with the third jury not only acquitting him, but issuing an unprecedented written apology. But the damage was catastrophic. His career never recovered, and he died in 1933, just as a comeback seemed possible. America's It Girl went from national sweetheart to public enemy faster than any modern cancel culture victim. Clara Bow embodied everything Hollywood was trying to overcome in the 1920s. She refused to abandon her Brooklyn attitude and accent. After winning a fan magazine beauty contest as a teenager, she clawed her way to stardom through sheer determination. By 1927, she was the #1 star in America, but retired in 1931 amid scandals at only 28 years old. Her numerous romantic entanglements earned her the nickname Crisis a Day Clara from exasperated studio executives. She was known as the woman who loved drinking, gambling, swearing, and screwing without discretion. The most damaging rumors came from Kenneth Anger's Hollywood Babylon, which claimed she had intimate relations with the entire USC football team, a story with no credible evidence that became Hollywood legend. In 1929, her assistant Daisy DeVoe stole her correspondence and tried to blackmail her. When Bow called police, DeVoe's trial became a media circus with wild accusations about promiscuity and substance abuse. In 1931, the Coast Reporter published a 3-part expose claiming she had participated in orgies and suffered from sexually transmitted diseases. The scandal forced her into early retirement, and she attempted suicide, spending her final years in seclusion. Hollywood's first murder mystery began with screams piercing a quiet morning. On February 2, 1922, Henry Peavy arrived for work at acclaimed director William Desmond Taylor's stylish bungalow. Instead of preparing breakfast, he found Taylor lying dead in the living room, a pool of blood spreading across the floor. Taylor's real identity added intrigue. He was born William Cunningham Dean Tanner in Ireland and had abandoned his wife and daughter in 1908, reinventing himself in Hollywood. 2 years before his murder, his home had been ransacked and stolen items were pawned under his original name, suggesting blackmail. 2 major stars became suspects: Mabel Normand, the female Charlie Chaplin who had visited him the evening he died, and teenage star Mary Miles Minter, who harbored romantic feelings for him. After his murder, love letters from Minter were found in Taylor's home, along with her nightgown. The evidence suggested the killer was around 5 feet tall, matching every female suspect. Minter's mother, Charlotte Shelby, had previously threatened another director who made advances toward her daughter. The murder weapon allegedly ended up in a Louisiana bayou, but the case remains officially unsolved. When Hollywood's ice cream blonde died under suspicious circumstances, studio fixers went into overdrive. Thelma Todd was found dead in her car from carbon monoxide poisoning in December 1935. The official story claimed suicide, but whispers of mob involvement swirled around her death. Todd had been receiving threats from gangsters who wanted to use her Malibu restaurant for illegal gambling operations. She had refused their demands, and some believe she paid with her life. The crime scene was suspiciously cleaned before proper investigation, and key witnesses suddenly developed amnesia. Studio executives worked overtime to control the narrative, understanding that any hint of organized crime connections could destroy Hollywood's carefully constructed, wholesome image. Today, crime scene photos would leak within hours, and citizen journalists with smartphones would expose any cover-up attempts immediately. Jean Harlow's husband's suicide raised more questions than it answered. In September 1932, Paul Byrne, husband to platinum blonde bombshell Jean Harlow, was found shot in their Beverly Hills home with what MGM claimed was a suicide note. But the circumstances were bizarre. His former common-law wife, Dorothy Millette, jumped to her death from a ferry just 2 days later. MGM immediately dispatched their legendary fixer, Howard Strickling, to sanitize the crime scene and protect Harlow's career. The studio's control over information was absolute. Police reports were altered, witnesses were silenced with payoffs, and inconvenient evidence simply disappeared. Internal MGM memos show frantic efforts to shield Harlow from scandal, capitalizing on her massive box office draw. The real story behind Byrne's death remains murky, with theories ranging from murder-suicide to organized crime involvement, but MGM's cover-up was so thorough that the truth may never be known. The affair that made senators call for moral legislation would today be celebrated as empowerment. In 1949, Ingrid Bergman shocked the world when news broke of her extramarital affair with Italian director Roberto Rossellini while still married to Swedish neurosurgeon Peter Lindstrom. Bergman, revered for wholesome roles in Casablanca and Gaslight, became pregnant with Rossellini's child, triggering international outrage. U.S. senators denounced her on the Senate floor as immoral, with one calling her a powerful influence for evil. Religious groups organized boycotts, and RKO Pictures canceled future collaborations due to public backlash. Bergman was essentially exiled from Hollywood for 7 years, living in Europe and making Italian films. She only returned triumphantly in 1956 to win an Academy Award for Anastasia. Today's audiences would likely support her choice to leave an unhappy marriage for true love, and the scandal would probably boost rather than destroy her career. The most shocking crime in Hollywood history happened on Good Friday, 1958. Lana Turner's 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, stabbed mobster Johnny Stompanato to death in Turner's Beverly Hills home. Stompanato, an associate of crime boss Mickey Cohen, had been in an abusive relationship with Turner marked by physical violence and threats. The relationship had become increasingly dangerous. Stompanato had even flown to London to confront Turner on the set of Another Time, Another Place, pointing a gun at Sean Connery's chest before being disarmed and deported. On the fatal night, when Stompanato threatened to destroy Turner's face and harm her family, Crane grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed him in the stomach. The coroner's inquest ruled it justifiable homicide, and Crane was exonerated. Turner's emotional testimony about the abuse she suffered generated public sympathy. However, conspiracy theories persist that Turner actually killed Stompanato, and her daughter took the blame because she was a minor. Today, the case would be seen through the lens of domestic violence awareness, with Turner hailed as a survivor. The systematic destruction of a child star through studio-sanctioned substance abuse represents Hollywood's darkest chapter. Judy Garland's tragedy began when MGM executives provided her with stimulants to maintain high energy on grueling film sets, followed by sleeping pills to ensure rest between shoots, starting from her vulnerable teenage years. This deliberate pharmaceutical manipulation created a devastating lifelong cycle of barbiturate and amphetamine dependency. Studio executives carefully shielded the public from Garland's increasingly erratic behavior, releasing cheerful publicity stills while production costs soared due to her unpredictable absences. When she couldn't perform, MGM sent her to sanitariums and orchestrated comebacks, treating her addiction as a publicity problem rather than a health crisis. The studio's exploitation of a minor through systematic administration of illegal substances would today trigger congressional hearings about child labor laws and criminal investigations into studio executives. Garland's story illustrates how the Dream Factory became a nightmare for its most vulnerable stars. The car crash that revealed Hollywood's hidden addiction crisis happened leaving Elizabeth Taylor's house. Montgomery Clift's 1956 automobile accident after leaving Taylor's dinner party left him physically disfigured and dependent on painkillers. The crash occurred when Clift, likely intoxicated, lost control of his car on a winding road. The accident shattered his jaw and damaged his face, requiring extensive reconstructive surgery that never fully restored his classical good looks. More devastatingly, the prescribed painkillers for his injuries fed into an existing pattern of substance abuse. Whispers about his sexuality and addictions became tabloid fodder, but studios continued exploiting his considerable talent while ignoring his deteriorating mental health. Clift's struggle with alcoholism and prescription drugs was an open secret in Hollywood, yet no one intervened. His career decline accelerated as his addictions worsened, leading to erratic behavior on film sets. Today's addiction awareness and LGBT+ advocacy would have provided support systems that might have saved him. The brutal murders that brought the 1960s to a terrifying end shocked even jaded Hollywood. On August 9, 1969, pregnant actress Sharon Tate and 4 others were brutally murdered by members of Charles Manson's cult at her Benedict Canyon home. Tate, married to director Roman Polanski, who was filming in Europe, was 8.5 months pregnant when she was stabbed 16 times. The savage killings, including the murder of coffee heiress Abigail Folger and celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring, sent shockwaves through Hollywood's elite. The randomness of the violence, Manson had chosen the house because he knew the previous tenant, not because he targeted Tate specifically, terrified celebrities who suddenly realized their wealth and fame couldn't protect them. The murders marked the end of the carefree 1960s and ushered in an era of paranoia and security concerns. The crime scene was so horrific that it traumatized even seasoned investigators. Today, the 24/7 news cycle would have covered every gruesome detail, potentially compromising the investigation, but ensuring no stone was left unturned. The director who fled justice became Hollywood's most notorious fugitive. In 1977, Roman Polanski was arrested for the statutory rape of 13-year-old Samantha Gailey at Jack Nicholson's house during a photo shoot. Polanski, already traumatized by his wife Sharon Tate's murder 8 years earlier, pleaded guilty to unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor as part of a plea deal. However, fearing the judge would impose a harsh sentence despite the agreement, Polanski fled to France before sentencing. His escape triggered an international manhunt and made him a permanent fugitive from American justice. Despite being unable to return to the United States, Polanski continued his filmmaking career in Europe, winning an Academy Award for The Pianist in 2003 while remaining a wanted man. His continued success while evading justice illustrates how the entertainment industry protects its own, regardless of legal accountability. Today's social media would ensure constant pressure for his extradition and accountability. The mysterious drowning that exposed Hollywood's darkest secrets happened on a yacht. Natalie Wood drowned near Catalina Island on November 29, 1981, during a yacht trip with husband Robert Wagner and Christopher Walken. The official cause was accidental drowning, but the circumstances were suspicious. Wood, who had a lifelong fear of water, was found floating in the ocean wearing only a nightgown and down jacket. Wagner's changing stories about the evening's events, combined with reports of arguing heard from the yacht, fueled decades of speculation. The yacht's captain, Dennis Davern, later claimed Wagner was responsible for Wood's death and that he had been pressured to keep quiet. Bruises on Wood's body were initially unexplained, and the coroner later changed the cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. Wagner has refused to speak with investigators who reopened the case in 2011. The mystery surrounding Wood's death continues to generate headlines and conspiracy theories, illustrating how unresolved celebrity deaths become cultural obsessions. America's leading man hid his sexuality for decades until AIDS forced the truth. Rock Hudson maintained his carefully constructed heterosexual image for over 3 decades under intense studio pressure. Publicists arranged fake romantic relationships and photo opportunities with eligible starlets, even orchestrating a lavender marriage to Secretary Phyllis Gates to quash persistent rumors about his sexuality. Behind the scenes, Hudson lived a completely different life, maintaining relationships with men while publicly dating women for magazine covers. The psychological toll was enormous. He struggled with alcoholism and depression while projecting the image of America's ideal leading man. When Hudson's 1985 AIDS diagnosis became public, it shattered the illusion that had defined his career and transformed public perception of the disease overnight. His revelation helped humanize AIDS for mainstream America, but the cost was devastating personal isolation. Hudson's story represents thousands of LGBTQ+ performers who sacrificed personal happiness for professional survival in an era when authenticity could mean career suicide. The Saturday Night Live star's notorious lifestyle became entertainment industry folklore. John Belushi's drug-fueled parties and erratic behavior in the 1970s were tolerated because he generated massive profits for Saturday Night Live and movies like Animal House and The Blues Brothers. His appetite for cocaine was legendary, and his binges became the stuff of Hollywood legend. Belushi's addiction was an open secret that everyone enabled rather than confronted. Studios and networks looked the other way as long as he remained profitable. creating a toxic environment where his self-destructive behavior was not just tolerated, but almost celebrated as part of his creative genius. When he died of a speedball overdose at the Chateau Marmont in 1982, the entertainment industry briefly mourned before returning to business as usual. His death revealed the dark side of 1970s Hollywood excess, where talent was valued over human life. Today's mental health awareness would demand accountability from enablers and systemic changes to prevent such tragedies. The children's television star, whose career ended with one arrest, became a cautionary tale. Paul Reubens' 1991 arrest as Pee-wee Herman for indecent exposure in an adult theater ended his children's television career instantly. The incident, which would barely register in today's news cycle, triggered a moral panic that saw toy stores pulling Pee-wee Herman merchandise from shelves and networks canceling reruns of his show. The overreaction was swift and merciless. Within hours, Reubens went from beloved children's entertainer to persona non grata. The arrest happened during an undercover police operation targeting the adult theater, and Reubens was caught in a sting that seemed designed to entrap customers rather than address serious crime. His mugshot became front-page news, and the contrast between his wholesome television persona and the circumstances of his arrest created a media feeding frenzy. The incident seems absurd now, when far more serious allegations against celebrities generate less sustained outrage. The blonde bombshell's occult connections and tragic death became tabloid gold. Jayne Mansfield's rumored relationship with Satanist Anton LaVey became a source of fascination and horror for 1960s audiences. LaVey, founder of the Church of Satan, claimed to have had an affair with Mansfield and cursed her romantic rival. When Mansfield died in a horrific car crash in 1967, decapitation rumors and supernatural theories dominated coverage. The occult associations that scandalized 1960s audiences would today be dismissed as eccentric personal choices, no different from celebrities exploring Buddhism or Scientology. Her death was sensationalized with claims of supernatural curses, when in reality, it was probably caused by dangerous nighttime driving conditions and an overloaded vehicle. The crash, which also killed her boyfriend and driver, was particularly gruesome because their car slid under a tractor trailer. Mansfield's 3 children in the back seat, including future actress Mariska Hargitay, survived with minor injuries. The tragedy became a cautionary tale about the dangers of late-night travel and the price of fame. The family tragedies that stemmed from decades of Hollywood excess destroyed a legendary actor's legacy. Marlon Brando's son, Christian's 1990 murder trial for killing his half-sister Cheyenne's abusive boyfriend, exposed the dark reality behind the Brando family's dysfunction. Christian shot Doug Drolle at the family's Beverly Hills compound, claiming he was protecting Cheyenne from domestic violence. The trial revealed a pattern of neglect and abandonment by Brando, who had fathered children with multiple women and failed to provide stable homes for any of them. Cheyenne, who had accused Drolle of abuse, suffered from severe mental illness and later hanged herself in 1995. The family's troubles stemmed from Brando's earlier lifestyle choices that were celebrated rather than questioned by an industry that prioritized artistic genius over responsible parenthood. Brando's pattern of abandoning families and creating damaged children was overlooked because of his transformative performances in films like A Streetcar Named Desire and The Godfather. The tragedies that befell his children were the inevitable result of decades of emotional neglect disguised as bohemian lifestyle choices. These 17 explosive scandals reveal how radically social standards have shifted across the decades. Activities that triggered nationwide moral panic and congressional hearings decades ago, extramarital affairs, substance experimentation, sexual liberation, are now barely noteworthy or even celebrated as progressive behavior. Meanwhile, today's cancel culture and instant digital justice might have actually protected some vulnerable stars by forcing earlier interventions in cases of addiction, abuse, and exploitation before irreversible damage occurred. The stars who survived these earth-shattering scandals often emerged stronger, their raw humanity revealed beneath Hollywood's artificial perfection. Perhaps the real scandal isn't what they did behind closed doors, but how an industry and society that claimed moral superiority systematically destroyed vulnerable individuals while protecting institutional power and financial interests. In our rush to condemn yesterday's sinners through the lens of today's values, we might discover they were simply flawed human beings trapped in an inhuman system designed to exploit their talents while discarding their well-being. A sobering realization that should give us pause before casting the first digital stone in our own era of instant outrage.